Hey Bass Heads, it's Eric Krause of Bass Assets with this week's Bass Break tip. I won't be able to post the whole video on Instagram, so if you'll go to my YouTube channel, Bass Assets, you'll see the whole video. I want to talk to you about the differences and when and where to use a spinnerbait versus a bladed jig or a pro blade versus a swim jig. I have these baits tied on almost all the time anywhere I go, and I can pretty well tell you when they work and where they work the most. So if you want to learn about it, go check me out on the video, and hopefully you'll pick something up that maybe you haven't learned before. So getting into it, I want to start out and explain the differences of where I use and when I use them. We'll start out with the spinnerbait. The spinnerbait is probably the best all-around covering bait in the zone of 3 foot to 9 foot. That's where I like to throw them. Now I don't necessarily throw them all the time at 9 foot depth. I'm just saying in that depth zone. It's a larger, more intrusive. It's got the vibration. It's got the big flashes and things like that. And a lot of times the larger fish would go for that over a smaller profile bait. So I use that a lot of times and especially now we're in the spawn or in the springtime. You know, you have these ditches or drains that lead up to spawning flats. There's always going to be some kind of a ditch or a creek or a runoff. Everybody talks about runoffs. Runoffs are just where water comes in from wherever and it creates a little creek. Well, that's the ditch that everybody talks about. Those ditches, when you find that ditch going up to a spawning area, that's where you want to fish this spinnerbait. In my mind, that's where I've found out that where it works the best. It can be anywhere from a 3 foot ditch to a 9 foot ditch, and it's not going to be 9 foot right up by 1 foot, but you know what I mean. It'll have it'll gradually taper down, but that ditch will always be a little bit deeper than the flats around it. So that's where I throw those spinner baits. That's where I really excel. That's where you catch the big females this time of year. When they're pulling up, they're not quite ready to move up on the flats yet, or you had a cold front come in, that's when you throw that. Great bait. They work around docks. They work around other things as well, but that's where I primarily focus on that. The pro blade jigs, or some people call them chatterbaits. We call them pro blades. They're bladed jigs. I throw those primarily around the 6 to 4 or 3 foot zone. Unless I'm fishing a rock dam, then I'll throw it in deep water if need be, but that's more of a non-springtime pattern that I get on the rocks. So I throw that around stick-ups, boat docks, anything that I can find. It will also work in your drains. And I've certainly found where fish will hit the pro blade when they won't hit the spinnerbait, because it's more erratic and moving faster, where a spinnerbait kind of is just there, and the big fish hits it or he doesn't. The pro blade doesn't give them as much time to think about it. They just got to react. So I've definitely found where the pro blade catches fish when the spinnerbait won't, especially in that 6 to 4 foot zone. So remember that. You should always have them tied on, but that's my take on it anyways. Now the swim jig. The swim jig is an interesting creature, because I use that primarily in shallow water. When I say shallow, I mean anywhere from 4 inches to 4 or 5 foot at the max. And the swim jig is primarily, in my eyes, it's a finesse spinnerbait or a finesse pro blade. When they won't hit the spinnerbait, they won't hit the pro blades because it's just too intrusive. What actually happens is you throw the big spinnerbaits or the big pro blades in the 2 foot water zone and they're there, you actually tend to scare fish off more than you do catch them. This little swim jig comes through fast, looks like a fish, surprises them, they turn around, they didn't feel the vibration and all the stuff coming, and that's when they bite the swim jig. So swim jig, I'm certainly fishing it around as shallow as I can. The pro blade jig, a little bit deeper. You can bounce it and hop it in deeper water and stuff like that as well, or you can scrub it on rocks in 8 to 12 foot of water. It'll work at certain times as well. The spinnerbait all around boat docks, deeper water, ditches, drains. That's really where I like to throw that. So Just remember that little swim jig, because that thing, I mean, you can catch them in deeper water too, like if they're not in the 2 foot of water and you want, and you know they're out there in 6, 7, 8 foot of water just sitting on the bottom waiting. We've caught them several times by going out with the swim jig when they wouldn't hit the others, and popping it and just letting it fall down, and then popping it again and letting it fall down in that zone. And what'll happen is they'll see that thing coming in and they'll hit it. It's not too intrusive. They think it's a shad dying or trying to get away. So I hope these tips helped you out. I've had a lot of questions about when and where to throw them. Another good thing, spinner baits work anywhere from, they work any time of year. They shine in the spawn and in the pre-spawn. The pro blades, kind of the same way. They shine in the pre-spawn and the spawn and the post-spawn. Actually, all these baits work well in the beginning of the year, but they also work well throughout the year, especially when you get into fall patterns and they start keying in on bait fish and things like that. So I hope these tips helped you out. Give me a like. Go check out our website. We have some great baits that we offer that I make all myself. So if you want to tune in and subscribe, there'll be more videos to come. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.